Medical help isn't available. Broken limbs and cuts are obvious and easily treated. What doctors who are forced to work in hospital grounds and temporary buildings really fear is waterborne diseases.
Gastroenteritis disease and typhus and dysenterias, those kind of disease.
Gastroenteritis, typhoid, dysentery.
Yes.
7-year-old Merva is already a victim of gastroenteritis. The summer weather that makes it possible for people to live and be treated outside is also a curse. It makes it easier for diseases to breed. Every possible open space is packed with people who can't go home. In this city block-sized park alone, nearly 2,000 are camped out, with just 2 taps to supply them with fresh water. Whole families are living, sleeping, cooking and eating next to stagnant ponds and fountains choked with rotting vegetables and cigarette butts. The men and women sweeping up kept repeating the same word, microbe. Doctors say the danger will become acute in about 7 days' time. That people can keep going under such circumstances speaks volumes for the human spirit. But there is a limit to how much anyone can bear.
The earthquake left a trail of destruction 280 kilometres long by 35 kilometres wide. It's estimated that about 200,000 people are homeless. 19,000 tents have been put up in the worst affected areas, but mass graves containing hundreds of quake victims have also become a new feature on the rubble-strewn landscape. Meanwhile, there's further frustration for crews battling a fire in the country's main oil refinery. After putting out the main fire, another broke out, sending billowing smoke into the badly polluted air above Izmit. Firefighters say it's now under control again.
The Turkish government estimates that 60,000 buildings have been destroyed or damaged. In Adapazarı, whole streets are being bulldozed. The search for survivors giving way to the need to find and bury the dead. The BBC's Gavin Hewitt reports.
Adna Menderes, one street in Adapazarı, destroyed as completely as if bombed in wartime. Amidst the rubble, some residents remain. But here at least there is little room for the specialist rescue teams. Today, large bulldozers were churning the ruins, whilst local men watched for bodies. Some were found, but many more remain. A decision has been taken to bulldoze the entire street. It's seen as the best way to ensure the dead are found and buried. All day, trucks have been carrying the rubble to a giant pit outside the town. Later in the day, a British rescue team from Rapid UK was told that from midnight tonight, their skills would not be needed. Many other damaged sections of the city are to be bulldozed, flattened, and then sprayed with disinfectant. For tonight, there are growing fears of typhoid and cholera. Residents like Tulin were today scavenging for possessions. She lost her mother in the earthquake, and now she's preparing to leave a street that soon will not exist. Almost half the buildings in this town of 150,000 people will have to come down. The Oxus family, leaving tonight, are convinced there is no future. Adapazarı is finished, he said. Everyone's going, we're going to go. Of course, it's over. From behind their curtained limousines, ministers viewed the town today. They remain wary of meeting the people directly. What is extraordinary on day 5 is how little Turkey's large armed forces have been used, either in the rescue attempt or in searching the rubble. It has led to mounting criticism, such as a headline in one of today's papers. It wasn't so much the buildings that fell apart, it was the system. With some of the searching ending, there is the start of an exodus from the worst affected cities, refugees within their own country.
Some Turks living in New Zealand are still desperately waiting for news of their loved ones. It's almost impossible to get a phone connection to Istanbul and difficult to ring out. Nicholas Salmon reports.
Setting up for dinner tonight, but this restaurateur is sick with worry. His 16-year-old daughter and 18-year-old son live in an apartment in the earthquake zone. He hasn't heard a word from them since the quake 6 days ago.
Last night, maybe 20 times I'm calling. And daytime, maybe 23rd time, then just called them and never contact.
He wants to fly to Turkey to look for them, but can't leave the business.
I'm just waiting, only waiting.
His business colleague is worried as well, after his brother managed to call from Turkey with news of his many cousins.
He said we contact some of them, they are fine, but some of them, a lot of them, still there, nothing.
Mr. Gultekin's hardest task is to keep up a brave front after such a horrific disaster.
We are in the hospitality business. We have to smile, we have to be happy, but we're not at the moment.
At a nearby restaurant, more worry.
My family live in Istanbul, 21 people. 4 days no contact because telecom building rubbish.
Just waiting and watching the TV, that's it.
Clearly, it could be some time before the waiting's over. Nicola Salmond, One Network News.
And an Australian firefighter has joined the international rescue effort. He's Warwick Kidd, one of the heroes of the Thredbo landslide disaster.
Here at home, it's been a grim weekend on our roads with 7 fatalities. 3 people died in a crash near Rotorua. There were 2 fatal crashes near Auckland, 1 south of Stratford and another near Tauranga. 43 people have died on the roads this month, 10 more than last August. The road toll for the year is also 26 more than at the same time last year. Residents in Christchurch are busy fixing their rooftops tonight after a mini tornado struck the suburb of Avondale. Trees came down and fences blew over, and it was all over in a matter of minutes. Joe Malcolm reports.
The mini tornado struck with a vengeance, bringing down power lines, weaving a path of destruction through fence lines and ripping branches off trees.
Went outside to put the car away and the neighbour's roof tiles smashed on the ground. Then we saw like a little mini tornado head across into the houses across the way.
Residents say they heard a loud roar and a bang. Some feared for their lives.
Well, I've never experienced anything like it in my lifetime before. You know, it's a new experience to me. But I thought the whole house was starting to lift.
Luckily, the damage was limited to roof tiles and spouting, although in one house a whole window blew out.
Our window got smashed against the back fence. We just had the kids screaming for a few minutes, thinking all the other windows would break.
It was all over in a matter of minutes. Locals left to clean up, wondering what had hit them. Joe Malcolm, One Network News.
Boaties who use satellite navigation equipment reported smooth sailing today as their high-tech systems made a fresh start. Like a precursor to the Y2K problems for conventional computers, midday today marked a rollover period for GPS, or global positioning systems. There was concern many receivers might lose their sense of location as their clocks reset to 0. Phil O'Sullivan reports.
The timer on this global positioning system counts down to midday, and with it, the possibility its date will reset incorrectly.
If it falls over, I'd be very surprised. There we go. And the time's okay, and it's still locked on.
No problems with this newer model, but in Auckland, this older system stopped working. Without a backup navigation system, the user could easily get lost.
If that's all you're relying on and you were at sea or in an aircraft, yeah, it could be a problem.
The receivers show their position from information relayed from 24 satellites orbiting the Earth. They're dependent on a timer running on 19.5-year cycles. It was feared leisure users with older receivers mightn't realise they were getting inaccurate information.
Mine's all right, still working. 12 o'clock's gone. She's turned over all right.
The Civil Aviation Authority says most planes used more than one navigation system, and boaties were prepared.
I think the yachting clubs, people like Coast Guard and the like, were all working together just to ensure that everybody was fully aware, and that seems to have paid dividends.
But this problem won't go away. GPS receivers will reset themselves again in 19.5 years' time. Phil O'Sullivan, One Network News.
To an inspirational story now about a Dunedin man who's become a black belt in karate. John Marible's achieved his success the hard way, as John McDermott reports.
John Marible's always liked a challenge. Aged 11, it cost him dearly. The day after this Edinburgh photo, a climbing accident left him in a wheelchair.
Nice to be sort of looked upon as an inspiration, but to me, I do it because I enjoy it.
His 25-year interest in karate has taken him overseas, done wonders for his health, his spirits, and those around him.
They said I couldn't do it, so that made me all the more determined to learn karate.
Now he's the teacher.
He's an inspiration to us all. Even though he hasn't got the use of his legs, he can have you backwards over his wheelchair in seconds flat.
The 43-year-old English-born banking consultant's also played wheelchair basketball to provincial level. But since coming here in the 70s, karate's been his passion. It's 18 years, though, since he took on this many tiles. one short, but the message is there.
If you want to do something, there's a way that you can do it. And hopefully people will see me doing karate and think, well, karate's not for me, but I'd like to give such and such a go.
John Marrable hopes he'll still be giving karate a go for a good few years yet. John McDermott, One Network News.
The unstoppable human spirit. Coming up on One Network News, Texas battens down the hatches as a hurricane looms offshore.
Relics of the Cold War, how Russia's mafia is turning them into hard cash.
Oscar winner Gina Davis takes aim for Olympic gold.
And a symbol of Japanese elegance gets a millennium makeover.
Russia claims it's winning the battle against Islamic rebels in Dagestan. Islamic separatists have been occupying mountain villages just over the border from Chechnya. This from the BBC.
Day and night, the Russian armed forces have been bombarding these mountain villages in Dagestan. It's 2 weeks since armed Islamic militants arrived here from Chechnya in an attempt to provoke rebellion against Moscow. But Russia claims its troops are slowly winning the battle to dislodge them, today seizing a key mountain pass, which the militants had been using to bring in supplies from Chechnya. Although with no independent access to the fighting, these claims are impossible to verify. Russia clearly doesn't want a repeat of the costly and unsuccessful war against separatists in Chechnya. And the Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin, newly appointed by Boris Yeltsin, has gained support of the head of Russia's Islamic leaders. With December's parliamentary elections just around the corner, Moscow must hope to end the fighting soon.
And Russian mafia suspected of selling off old military hardware are at the centre of an FBI money laundering investigation in the United States. Jim Stewart of CBS reports there's a staggering amount of money involved.
Western lawmen have long suspected that when the old Soviet army rolled out of Eastern Europe a decade ago, not all of their tanks and weapons went with them. Some of the gear investigators believe was sold instead to middlemen who then made a fortune peddling it to places like Iraq and Iran. The suspicions, it seems, were well-founded. Today, one of those suspected Russian middlemen, Semyon Mogilevich, emerged at the center of an alleged money laundering scheme that now threatens a major U.S. bank. A New York Times report said as much as $10 billion in Russian mob money may have been washed through the Bank of New York in recent months. In a statement, the bank acknowledged it is cooperating in the investigation of the use of the bank to transfer funds from Russia, but pointed out there are no allegations of wrongdoing by the Bank of New York. In a country increasingly rocked by mob violence, federal and international investigators say Mogilevich and his gang stand out.
They tend to be brutal. They have no qualms about that. They like to make examples.
One report credited by lawmen says Mogilevich employed Russian veterans who became infamous for their torture of extortion victims. Other reports link him to ongoing efforts to sell off part of Russia's aging nuclear arsenal.
Certainly the nuclear program in Iran wouldn't even exist, not nearly at the level it is, without the Russian assistance. It's out there.
What bothers federal lawmen the most about this case is the sheer scope of it all. In one 6-month period, the bank was reportedly flooded with 10,000 Russian mob transactions, totaling more than $4 billion, and apparently they had a great deal more where that came from.
And still in the United States, the first major threat of the hurricane season is closing in on southern Texas. Hurricane Brett is moving up the Gulf of Mexico and might hit built-up areas tonight. Coastal residents have been evacuated as forecasters predict 200-kilometre-an-hour winds and 4-metre waves. Southern states have so far escaped serious hurricanes this year, but experts say a series of large storms lie ahead.
There'll be no Olympic fairy tale for Hollywood movie star Gina Davis. The Oscar winner failed to qualify for the American Olympic archery team. Davis blamed rain and the constant pressure from her fans for her poor performance, but says she's not giving up yet.
My goal is what it was from the beginning, to see how good I can get. I'm just going to keep pursuing it until I find that out.
But Davis still has some way to go. She finished 24th in a field of 28.
Japan's traditional ceremonial dress is making a comeback as a fashion statement for the new millennium. The BBC reports the kimono revival is catching on because it's cool in more ways than one.
It wasn't that long ago that the older generation was decrying the demise of the kimono, dismissed by Japan's fashion-conscious Generation X as a quaint relic. It seems the kimono's virtues are in vogue once more. The revival has accounted for a 60% rise in the sale of kimonos at this Tokyo department store, a welcome boon in a time when the economy is contracting.
I like it because it's easy to wear and it's trendy.
Gone are the traditional water prints, the brighter and bolder the better. On the streets, the lightweight summer kimono, or yukata, is being teamed with platform clogs and tattoos, neon-coloured makeup and eclectic spiky hair. In the summer swelter, the yukata's practical attributes have also won its devotees among 20-somethings.
I also think the yukata is very practical because you can wear it even if your size changes.
In its extreme form, the old kimono is scarcely recognizable. Takuya Angel calls his iconoclastic collection trad techno. Kilt synthetics and daring cuts, yukatos camouflaged as gift wraps and handbags. Tradition has nothing to do with this new wave chic. Keeping up with the magazine covers is the only motivation behind this fashion renaissance.
Just ahead, you're never too old to start, why a 78-year-old coaster is taking up politics.
Plus, back with a snort and a roar, the song that topped the charts 30 years ago.
Later in sports, Stars and Stripes on show as Mr. America's Cup bears all.
And prime time support as the Rams go after basketball glory. A protege of former Labour leader Mike Moore has been chosen to succeed him in the Labour-held Christchurch seat of Waimakariri. A member of the Labour Party since he was 14, Clayton Cosgrove has been a key campaign manager for Mike Moore. The 29-year-old was one of the staunch supporters known as the Beagle Boys, who gathered around the Labour leader during the 1993 election campaign.
I think the most important thing that Mike Moore taught me is that the first and last duty of a local member of Parliament is to look after the local people.
Of course, I mean, mixed emotions, people have been terrific, but the fact we've got Clayton here and a person who'll look after them makes me feel much better.
Mr. Moore is leaving Parliament to become co-leader of the World Trade Organization in Geneva. Waimakariri is considered a safe Labour seat, but Clayton Cosgrove says he won't be taking the electorate's support for granted.
West Coaster George Halsey is old enough to be Clayton Cosgrove's granddad, but he's just as keen to contest a seat in this year's election. The 78-year-old motelier from Fox Glacier plans to stand as an independent in the Labour-held seat of West Coast Tasman. He says the exodus of young people from the coast in search of jobs made him want to enter politics. His main campaign platform is employment. Joe Malcolm has the story.
After living on the West Coast for nearly 50 years, George Halsey has watched communities here grow and, he says, decline.
I can see the coast falling to bits.
George loves the West Coast with a passion.
Well, the glacier was right down here.
He worked for years as an alpine guide on both the Fox Glacier and the Franz Joseph.
People used to come through and they would stay 2 or 3 nights. We used to put on dances and all sorts of things for entertainment.
Now George often has guests for only one night. As well as convincing tourists to stay longer, he believes better roads would bring more through.
I would like to see the Haas-Milford Highway open.
But he says there are obstacles.
If we want to build any roads on the coast here, we automatically come across national parks. Why shut the place up? Anything that creates progress, I'm for.
George isn't concerned at being the oldest candidate by far. In fact, he's looking at a long and illustrious career in politics.
I'd like to get to 100.
Do you hope to be in Parliament at the age of 100 still?
Well, there's nothing impossible, is there?
Joe Malcolm, One Network News.
One of the most successful New Zealand pop songs ever recorded has been given a new lease of life for the millennium. Hogsnort Rupert first released Pretty Girl almost 30 years ago. A new version was performed by the band for the first time last night. John Newton was there.
It's called Pretty Girl 2000.
The other day, as I made my way, I heard the music start to play.
She may have a little more electronic flesh on her bones, but nobody could mistake the tune that's now part of New Zealand pop history.
Proceed down and I take you home on a bright and sunny morning.
I wouldn't mind $1 for every time I sung it.
Band leader Dave Luther gave birth to the song in 1970. A painless delivery, he says it virtually wrote itself. Since then, Pretty Girl sold 60,000 records and won numerous awards.
We've always done Pretty Girl, and it's always been the favourite of the crowds, so let's hope that the new version will be just as popular.
After supporting the Beach Boys last summer at Hawke's Bay's Mission Vineyard, Hogsnort Rupert have enjoyed a return to popularity, cashing in with a new CD and hoping the fans will approve of the new look Pretty Girl.
The new one is far more professional.
Just really funky and awesome beat and cool lyrics. I think it's great.
So it seems likely we'll be hearing some more of those immortal words.
Come on, my lover, give us a kiss.
John Newton, One Network News.
Another timeless classic. Updating our top stories now, international rescue teams have begun pulling out of Turkey as searchers concentrate on the grim task of recovering the thousands of dead. Soaring temperatures and the risk of disease are adding to an increasingly desperate situation.
The first hurricane of the season is threatening to hit Mexico and Texas with devastating force. Cyclone Brett has been gathering strength in the Gulf of Mexico. Coastal residents are preparing for 200-kilometre winds and 4-metre waves.
Global navigation systems, often used by boaties and pilots, were put to an early Y2K test today. 0 hour rolled round at midday, with the date automatically resetting. However, the changeover caused few problems for people with updated GPS technology.
Well, later in the news hour, an activist often at odds with authority. That's our Person of the Week.
But first, Bernadine with sports, and the fourth and deciding cricket test could go either way.
Sure could. The New Zealand cricketers certainly lost initiative on the third day. Only some huge hitting from Chris Cairns enabled New Zealand to set any sort of total and meet the toast of the Waikato, the netball team that's broken a 15-year drought. Good evening. The unofficial battle for the Test cricket's wooden spoon is evenly poised with 2 days to play at the Oval. The third day of the deciding fourth Test against England had started so promisingly for New Zealand, as Steve Marshall reports.
The day didn't start well for England, with Phil Tufnell accused of verbally abusing two 11-year-old fans. Then it lost its last 3 wickets for 3 runs, Chris Cairns with a 5-wicket bag. And for the 14th consecutive Test, England had failed to outscore its opponents in the first innings.
Yes, I would think so.
But thoughts of another humiliating day for English cricket were tossed aside as Ed Giddens, back from an 18-month drugs ban, took 3 for 9 in a 7-over spell.
Oh, my word, that is sensational. Oh, wow. Roger Toos is lifting his leg.
New Zealand's 83-run first innings lead began to look more and more valuable as the top order capitulated. Adam Perori's dismissal just embarrassing as the Kiwis crashed to 39 for 6.
That's not good judgment.
However, this day belonged to Chris Cairns. How New Zealand would have missed him had he been ruled out, as he put on 40 with Craig McMillan.
And that's gone all the way.
Even the loss of his partner didn't deter Cairns as he hoisted Tufnell over the ropes twice on his way to his 14th Test 50.
That's better. Oh, that's a big one. That's up here.
In his best all-round form of his career, he continued to cart Tufnell over the fence. In the process, with Theon Nash eclipsed the record 8th-wicket stand at the Oval his father Lance had previously been part of. But just as a third Test century was within sight, Mullally went low to end his stay straight after tea.
One of the most stunning return catches you could hope to see.
I've been pretty disappointed with the way I've batted the series today. I mean, I haven't contributed at all. So today was a good day to contribute.
Vittori couldn't repeat his first innings heroics, and when Shane O'Connor departed, England needed 246, its biggest ever chase against New Zealand on home soil. Nash provided the initial breakthrough. Then Shane O'Connor found the captain's outside edge to reduce England to 45 for 2.
Got him.
Mike Atherton, who was dropped on 3, and Graham Thorpe then put on 46 to tilt the scales in England's favour. So when play resumes later tonight, New Zealand time, will Stephen Fleming become the first New Zealand captain to win a series here since Jeremy Coney 13 years ago? Or will the English batsmen score the necessary runs to secure a series victory that most would agree they scarcely deserve? Steve Marshall, One Network News, The Oval, London.
Chris Cairns' 80 came off just 94 balls, and the Black Caps will be looking for him to get another 5-wicket bag if they're to deny England the spoils. The English rugby team found it much easier in its World Cup warm-up match against the USA. The BBC's Steve McCormick reports.
Back in an England shirt, although still with a discipline charge hanging over him, Lawrence Dallaglio took his place for a match which had the makings of an easy English win, but which turned into a slaughter. Richard Hill's try, the first of 16 scored by England. Only 15,000 spectators watched a contest which became meaningless early on, as time after time England sliced their way through a weak American defence. Almost everyone scored, notably Jeremy Guscott with what must be 4 of his easiest international tries. At least there was a proper crowd at Cardiff's Millennium Stadium, where the Boots dominated the entire first half. Neil Jenkins's 21 points sending Wales into the dressing rooms comfortably ahead. But Canada emerged from the break with noticeable resolve to try to end their current spell of 6 successive defeats, and David Lockheed's try helped take them to within 2 points of their opponents. That was their high watermark, though, and Wales reimposed their superiority with 2 tries of their own. The first seeing Jenkins pop up to finish off a move he'd started and take his personal points tally to 26. With 5 out of 6 seats at Murrayfield empty, rugby was struggling even to qualify as fringe entertainment in Edinburgh. Although so inept was Scotland's defence, it might merit a mention in tomorrow's comedy reviews. The second try conceded, a simple interception by Bartolucci, bordering on the farcical. Argentina had the match in their grip throughout, and 2 late home tries did little to mask one of Scotland's poorest performances for many years.
So Argentina beating Scotland for the 3rd successive time, Canada losing its 7th match in a row, and England posting a ton to embarrass the United States. But things couldn't have been closer in this afternoon's NPC clash between Wellington and North Harbour.
A minute's silence to remember Leilani Reid, a tribute from her hometown rugby team. And Wellington's start was equally quiet, assuming an early lead through penalties.
But he kicks it flat, and that's good enough.
That was until Tony Coughlin crashed through to eventually touchdown for Harbour.
Coughlin, and he's down. Or is he?
Wellington answered through Norm Broughton, starting in his first NPC match since returning from a stint in Japan.
And he gets it to Broughton. And Norm Broughton.
Little time for Wellington to relax, though. A skillful burst by Rua Tapoki placed Harbour in the perfect position to score and close within a point of Wellington.
And McFarlane scores, and that's a lovely try.
Harbour held off a late Wellington surge, but couldn't squeeze any further points to clinch a precious victory. The Lions squeaking home 21-20.
For much of the 80s and 90s, Auckland was the glamour netball team, Waikato the also-rans. But last night the situation reversed. Mary Durham was there.
After 15 years without a title at last, something to celebrate. But today's breakfast was poignant for some. Last night, Karen Gaddis and Megan Brown revealed they were cutting ties with the team to head off on the big OE.
We're one of those units that just had such a great week, and to leave on that, it's just amazing.
Because we made a pact to each other. The last time we were going to be together, and we wanted to make it special.
And make it special, they did.
Rangatawa turns and spots the feed straight under the post. Good work.
Auckland had only won 2 of their 5 matches heading into this final compared to Waikato, which had an unblemished record. And the differences in their build-up soon showed up on court.
An 8-goal lead at quarter-time became 17 by the halfway mark. And as the confidence grew, so did the style. Tanya Nicholson with a move in the best tradition of Belinda Colling and Donna Lophagen. The result never in doubt, Waikato winning 63-47.
That's it. And that's all Waikato. Elated, great, everything you could possibly think of.
And it's evident those feelings aren't going to wear off in a hurry. Mary Durham, One Network News.
Well, there was better news for Auckland's basketballers last night. The Northerners continued their dominance of the NBL in the 1990s after leading it throughout in last night's final in Christchurch. David DeSoma reports.
This is the moment they've been waiting for all year. Auckland celebrates its 4th NBL title in just 5 years. the Northerners always have this final in their grip. It was a match which featured some sublime play, like Carlo Vericio's gem to Robert Hickey. Intensity's always a big part of the finals. None felt it more than Auckland's Prem Krishna. Auckland's outstanding captain, Hero Cameron, who picked up 3 NBL awards on Friday night, was back to his brilliant best, as Canterbury coach Bert Knops pondered his best move.
But what we're really looking for is inside action.
But from the three-point line, Cameron was just as effective, as Auckland led 46-31 at the break. Just when the Rams needed a game breaker, enter a high-flying Clifton Bush. Together with a sharp-shooting Dave Langrell, the Rams closed the margin to 67-63. It was enough to send the PM into the Macarena, and Auckland coach Tab Baldwin to lay down the law.
The three-point shots. Hey, shut up!
In the end, the Rams couldn't deliver a hometown victory, as Auckland won 79-72. It was all the sweeter as the Northerners had lost 3 matches in the South Island earlier in the season. David DeSoma, One Network News.
Grand Prix experiences guided Kiwi Indy Lights rookie Scott Dixon to another American milestone. Former Ferrari and McLaren Formula One driver Stefan Johansson, who is Dixon's boss, helped the team set up his car at the one mile oval in Chicago. And the result, a stunning lap record, giving Dixon pole position tomorrow morning. The heavyweights are starting to roll in at the America's Cup Challenger Series. One arrival was meant to be top secret, the other happy to have the exposure, reflecting the owner's new approach to the event. Martin Tasker explains.
Once upon a time it would have been all secrets and subterfuge. Now Dennis Conner is anxious to make the America's Cup more open, and the Stars and Stripes was swung off the container ship in Tauranga today. The shrouds and other disguises were conspicuous by their absence. Connor's 8th campaign is a one-boat affair, Mr. America's Cup hoping to notch up a 5th victory. Trying to stop him will be the New York Yacht Club's Young America Syndicate, whose first boat was meant to arrive in secret, the syndicate refusing to confirm or deny details of its movements. The half-covered hull arrived at the Cup Village, followed by a crate which might or might not contain the keel, and under the interested eye of Team New Zealand crew, the mast was trucked in too. Trying to ensure a fair contest between all the yachts will be Brian Willis, just confirmed as chief umpire for the America's Cup and keen to avoid lengthy protests.
The rules are there to be used to the limit on the water, and that's expected of match races. So a fair fight on the water and no technical protests.
What's the likelihood of any of that coming about?
Pretty slim.
Willis will oversee a team of a dozen international on-the-water umpires. Martin Tasker, One Network News.
Beatrice Faumuina has made a solid start to her defence of the World Discus title in Spain. The world champion's throw of 64.18 metres was the second best in the qualifying rounds. The final is on Tuesday morning. But disappointment for other Kiwis competing. A slow start saw Chris Donaldson 4th in his heat of the 100 metres, and long jumper Chantal Brunner failed to make it past the qualifying round. Meanwhile, in the men's shot put event, CJ Hunter's finals round throw of 21.79 metres was good enough to earn the American gold. And success on the track for his wife, Marion Jones, who set the fastest time of the year in the second round of the women's 100 metres. She's also qualified for the long jump. The race for NRL Rugby League playoff spots is getting super tight. The Sydney City Roosters were looking to regain a share of the competition lead against the St George Illawarra Dragons today, with Kiwi Richie Barnett at his evasive best.
Now 5 minutes out. Dumps the pass back. Fletcher gets there for Sydney City.
However, the Dragons came storming back in the second half, with Wayne Bartram bagging a double and Trent Barrett the match winner, as the 7th place Dragons finally returned to their giant-killing best. The Dragons withstanding a late Roosters charge to win by 2. The North Sydney Bears upset the Melbourne Storm, and the Penrith Panthers crushed the Canberra Raiders, and the Western Suburb Magpies assured themselves of the wooden spoon. The Olympic aspirations of Kiwi badminton #1 Jeff Bellingham were under the microscope this afternoon. He took on Japan's #4 in the Auckland International Championships. Martin Tasker reports.
For 23-year-old commerce student Jeff Bellingham, a win here would have secured vital ranking points for Olympic qualification, but almost the same apply to Japanese professional Hidetaka Yamada. Ranked 4 in Japan, he's trying to break into the top 3, which would certainly boost his Olympic chances. Yamada took the first game, 15-10, and this was match point in the second at 14-4. The fact that it was a 29-shot rally, little consolation to Bellingham and his Olympic hopes.
I'll have to go to Korea and Japan to play tournaments there to get more ranking points, but yeah, every time I don't win a tournament here, it just makes it that little bit tougher.
Overall, New Zealand badminton officials were delighted to have 5 Kiwis in the finals of a very strong international field, but odds on Olympic medal chances remain very long.
As realistic as the USA winning the World Rugby Cup, so you've got to be, you've got to put it all into perspective. The Olympics were never our #1 target. It would be nice to have somebody at the Olympics, but we also have to be realistic.
In the ladies' singles, Kiwi #1 Rona Robertson retained her title with a comfortable win over Rebecca Gordon, 11-2, 11-3. Marty Teska, One Network News.
And that's sport.
For which we're grateful. Thanks, Bernie.
And after the break, Karen's here with the weather for the week to come.
Plus, no stranger to controversy and not afraid to speak his mind. Our Person of the Week.